Hello and welcome to the Free Speech Collective Talkies. It's a new series throwing light on different aspects of free speech. In fact, some which we might not even obviously recognize as free speech issues. And to start with, in this episode, we have a very renowned film writer, a film critic, and author, Anna MM Vetticad. Welcome, Anna. And we'd like you to throw light on this whole phenomenon of review bombing and the legal intervention to stop it, and what impact that has on film writers like yourself and also the general public. But if you could just sort of take us back to the beginning, maybe in October, November, and the developments, that would be great.
Okay, so, Laxmi, although this is the developments that we're talking about are taking place in Kerala, I think that they have implications for free speech across the country, because if Kerala producers are in any way successful in curbing film writing and film reviewing of any sort, even if it is, at the moment, they're saying that they only have an issue with social media influencers and YouTubers and bloggers, but these are like very loose terms, right? You and I, as very serious journalists, could start a YouTube channel. Are you going to dismiss Ravish, for instance, as just a YouTuber? When you say you want to curb negative reviews by dodgy YouTubers and social media influencers, what is the protection and the guarantee that as soon as you're successful in that, you won't then try to curb legitimate reviews by honest film critics, whether they are professional film critics who have associations with newspapers and TV channels, or film critics who are operating independently? Who decides whether someone should, and especially in the present political environment where there are so many progressive journalists who have been compelled to go independent? So what's happened in Kerala right now is that since last year, there have been very prominent film artists and directors and producers who have been speaking up about how online reviews are harming their films. I would say it probably began with Mohanlal, because he was deeply hurt about the public response to Marakar Aravikkaladil Simham, a very expensive film. It got a national award for best feature. And then when it was finally released, the response from film critics, professional film critics, and the public on social media was uniformly negative. And I will tell you, I think it is an abysmal film. And I myself had reviewed it, and I had said so in my review. But look, film people are human like anybody else. It's absolutely okay to be hurt. What Mohanlal said, though, sounded very strangely illogical. He said in an interview a while later that he likes Hyderabad because people in Hyderabad don't criticize their films. They feel invested in the growth of their cinema and in encouraging their cinema. What is this about? It's not a compliment to the people of Hyderabad if he's saying that they're not critiquing their cinema. And honestly, it is a compliment to the people of Kerala if he's saying that they are critiquing, the Malayalis in Kerala are critiquing their cinema. But anyway, he said this as though Malayalis in Kerala are pulling down their film industry. Then a while later, Anjali Menon, the film director, highly respected, I respect her immensely too, spoke about in an interview about how she thinks that film critics, now she was referring to professional film critics, should educate themselves in the art and craft and technicalities of cinema before becoming film critics. Now, she was criticized for condescension. While I do believe that all of us as critics should try to educate ourselves as much as possible, I certainly don't think that anyone should be compelled to take a course in editing, for instance, or film direction. There is no such compulsion placed on filmmakers, right? No one says you have to go to film school and only then you can make a film. My choice, for instance, between if I have to go for a film festival and a seminar on human rights, there are occasions when I will pick the seminar on human rights because that's my approach to all my journalism, right? Then came Roshan Andrews, who spoke of people in Korea. Now, Roshan Andrews, again, a highly respected filmmaker, spoke of people in Korea being invested in supporting their cinema and not criticizing it. But he was he was being critical of the masses online in Kerala, who he felt pulled down their films. Then, there was Alphonse Putran, whose film Gold bombed, and he was very upset by trolls. Now, there is a difference between each of the people, each of the elements that are being targeted in the criticism by each of these four people who I've mentioned. But you know how it is when something is said in public, everything gets blurred and mixed up. And the general feeling in Kerala is that the Malayalam film industry has a problem with criticism right now. And the free speech advocates are pointing out that while great Malayalam cinema is getting acclaim across the country, there is a lot of really bad cinema that's also being made. We are a country, of course, after all, that produces a huge number of films. So, 1 dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen great films from a small film industry like the Malayalam film industry does not mean that they aren't making bad films. They are. And honestly, the films that ended up being mentioned in online discussions about and in conversations by filmmakers as films that suffered due to online negative feedback were all films that I would say, Laxmi, were really bad films. This includes Gold. This includes Saturday Night, which was the film that Roshan had released. And even Anjali's film Wonder Woman that came up after her interview. I love her previous work, but Wonder Woman is, it felt like it wasn't a film made by her. Now, all of this is happening. And then suddenly this year in October, you have Mubin Rauf, the filmmaker, actually going to court, asking the Kerala High Court for directions to prevent online reviews from vloggers and YouTubers of his film, Aromalinde Adyate Pranayam, for the first 7 days after its release. Okay. And the High Court actually spoke about a distinction between serious committed film critics versus those who are, have other stakes in it. And then there was a filmmaker called Obeni Ibrahim, who went to the police to complain against a promotions company that he had hired. And he said that that promotions company, and he appears to have fallen out with the head of that promotions company. And he said that that promotions company was responsible for a whole bunch of negative reviews that appeared in the media of his film, Rahil Magan Kora. This is the very long background to the discussion that we're going to have right now. There are actually police cases that have been filed against these this promotions company head and some online reviewers. I think the concern here is, firstly, Malayalam cinema as a whole needs to introspect. I think our country in general needs to introspect. It's wonderful that we make 2,800 plus films per annum, but really, do we need to? It's great that we are passionate about cinema, but there's also a lot of rubbish being made, not only by big filmmakers, but also, I'm sorry to say, by people whose only defense of their cinema's quality is, but it's indie cinema and you should support it, etc., etc. That's the first thing. Second, the fact that these curbs, this attempt to curb online responses is coming from Kerala, I think is very worrisome, because here in the north, at least, the perception of Kerala, even right now, when you can see across the country, there is such a clampdown on free speech, on the news media, because the political establishment is coming after journalists and media houses. The perception of Kerala is of a vibrant society which is fighting to preserve freedom of expression in the state, and which has a vibrant discourse on the arts in the public realm. And honestly, that is what I think of Kerala too, as far as the discourse is concerned, because I've had the most wonderful experiences of going for film festivals and my cabbies and my auto rickshaw drivers recommending films to me. So when this is happening from Kerala, I think it is worrisome, because at the moment that state is seen as one of the last bastions of liberal politics in the country, whatever its flaws might be. Third, how do you define a YouTuber or an online reviewer is a member of the public who is not a professional film critic? is such a person not free to give their response to a film on a public platform? Who is anyone to curb that criticism? The democratization of opinion in this world that has resulted from the advent of the internet and the proliferation of social media platforms is obviously a double-edged sword. There are some brilliant people who have got platforms on which to air their views, people who wouldn't have had platforms in the past, but there are also some extremely unintelligent, silly people who have got space. Who are we to decide that a silly person cannot air their views about a film on an online platform? And why should there be a condescension towards a member of the public versus a professional film critic putting their opinion out? Do filmmakers write on their tickets that only an informed member of the public who knows film editing and direction and writing should buy this ticket? They don't do that, right? Do they have an objection? Have you ever come across a filmmaker in any part of India who has objected to a non-technical person writing a social media post saying, oh my God, the editing of that film was fantastic? So this issue, the objection comes only when there is negative feedback, right? And the third thing, we have seen in the past 9 years, I think the past 9 years have been a good case study for what happens when a supposedly liberal political party brings in laws that curb our freedoms and that are left lying around. Like a lot of the beef-related laws and the ban on production or sale or transportation did not come in the Modi era, right? But these laws were just lying around to, I suppose, appease conservatives in the majority who would, to whom you could say, hey, but we do have these laws, don't think we are neglecting you. But then a right-wing government comes in and it uses those very laws that you as a liberal have left lying around, right? So we cannot afford, across the country, film critics, film commentators, and journalists in general, and free speech advocates cannot afford to allow the Kerala film producers and directors to take this forward without very strongly objecting, because today they are trying to go after the general public in the guise of saying that they are going after YouTubers, social media influencers, vloggers, etc., who are unethical and demand money for positive feedback. They are going after the general public, in my opinion. But the next step will be journalists. Because how do you decide? I mean, there was a meeting of the Kerala Film Producers Association with FEFCA, which is again one of the major associations in the state, where they have said that they have very strong objections to film write-ups and feedback that is sexist, misogynistic, casteist, etc., etc. Boss, this is really like, you make films that are sexist, you make films that are misogynistic, you make patriarchal, casteist films, and then you're telling the public and you're telling the media that we need directions from you. Please look within and examine yourself and listen to the feedback that some of us have been giving you for many years, that you are extremely sexist. And you are not adhering to the theories that you give us in public when you make your films. So the public does not need lectures from either the Malayalam film industry or any other film industry in the country, because what we need is a vibrant public discourse. And of course, if any film producer can provide proof of anyone, a professional critic or a member of the general public, trying to get money from a producer and threatening that they will do negative reviews if they are not given money, please, by all means, provide that proof to the police and let that individual be taken into custody, be punished for what they're doing. But, and here, Laxmi, I want to bring in one additional point, and then you can ask me whatever questions you want. what the Kerala film producers and directors have unwittingly done is expose their own unethical practices in film promotions. Okay, because in the past 15, 20, 25 years, all India's film industries, not just Malayalam, but all of India's film industries have gradually started using these methods. When TV channels, there was a TV channel boom, and TV channels started sending their reporters to theaters to get first reactions to films. Okay. What producers and directors and PR started doing is they also, after a while, started sending their people to get responses. Now, if you and I as journalists send someone to a theater, we will air the whatever views come, right? Whether they're positive or negative. Now, producers, PROs who are recording those views, they're not putting up the negative views on whatever positive views they get. They're making sure that their cast, their crew, put up these responses on their social media platforms. Now, I would like to know what guarantee is there that those members of the audience weren't planted by the producer. Nobody asks producers these questions, right? And they're not introspecting and telling and admitting that they've created these Frankenstein's monsters that are now turning on them. You don't get to try and manipulate the public by creating a false impression that there is a wave of love for your film through your social media platforms. And you don't get to, in off-the-record conversations, producers across the country have told me they do things like paying for likes on YouTube for the trailer, paying for positive Facebook comments and tweets. So they want to do all of this. Then there are certain individuals that they build up as influencers. But when it gets to a stage where when I say they build up, what I mean is, there's this totally unknown person suddenly starts doing reviews on, let's say, Instagram, and that person's reviews are quoted on posters of films. Obviously, then the industry is contributing to building up that person, right? But when the person gets to a stage where they've got such a large following that they have clout on their own and they don't need the film industry to build them up, and they turn around and tell you, well, you better pay if you want positive reviews, you cannot then complain, right? Because you created that Frankenstein's monster and you've been unethical. If you were paying for positive reviews, then first confess that you did before trying to tar everyone with the same brush, because I'm sure there are many independent voices who are actually just passionate about cinema, and it's really unfair to cast a shadow on all of them because some have turned on you.
Yeah. No, so leading from this, Anna, my question was, as soon as I saw all of this happening, was how real is the economic impact on their films, or is it just another bogey to, shape the narrative in the way a certain segment, in this case, film producers, want it to be shaped? Or is there really, could negative reviews really be affecting the box office sales? Is it realistic of them to believe so?
This is because this is not measurable. First of all, across the world, there are producers, directors, and film artists who have a problem with film critics. This is not something that's exclusive to India. But across the world also, we know that the impact of reviews and even the impact of online feedback, it's not measurable, right? But because this is such a high stakes game, everybody wants to curb as much as possible, and everybody wants to control the narrative to the extent that it's possible, because if social media commentary is influencing box office, then you want to be careful. If film reviews by professional critics are influencing box office, then they want to try and control those in some way. So this claim, actually, the Malayalam film directors and producers who have been objecting are actually saying there have been financial losses to them because of these negative reviews, and negative reviews by social media voices, right? And but again, they've not been able to prove it, because how do you prove this? We know that there are films that have, we know from, but this is all anecdotal. We know that from our personal experiences that there are films that we have gone for because we heard a friend talking about it. But then there are some of us who also respect a particular film critic, and therefore we went and saw a film. There is no formula to prove. I mean, we have instances of a film doing very well, even though all the reviews were negative. But certainly, if all the reviews are positive and the general feedback from the public is positive, and the time, there are so many factors, right? And the timing is right. Like you didn't release it at the time of the board exams, for instance. So many factors come into play. So producers are just protecting themselves because honestly, nobody knows. Nobody actually knows. But what is being exposed through this fight in Kerala is actually the manipulation of free speech by not just producers in Kerala, but producers in the rest of the country. They have outed themselves in effect. Because, in the past 10 years, I would tell you that the press previews we attend have completely changed. Earlier, there would be about 10, 15 film journalists, and they were all people we knew. They were from known publications, etc. Now our halls are packed. They're packed with people, our preview halls, and they're packed with people that those of us who've been in the business for long don't recognize at all. And we get to know that they either belong to film clubs or they are part of social media groups like Facebook groups of film lovers and so on and so forth. So they're being given access. And while I don't think there's anything wrong with giving access to somebody, what is happening is that we exit the hall and there'll be crowds standing over there trying to interview us to get our opinion. Now, after a while, over the years, I think they noticed that professional film critics are not stopping to give their opinions because we are working for media organizations and we owe it to our organizations to go back and write our reviews for them. So now there are crowds of people. These are, I don't know who they are. They're in the lobbies, they're giving their opinions on films. And these are people who've been sent for previews, which means producers and PROs are controlling this. Who are these people? Why are producers and PROs trying to control opinion? Now, if you've sent these people to the hall to give their opinions, are you telling me that you have given them the freedom to say exactly what they believe? Or have you told them what they should? And again, off the record, so many people have told me that there is some compensation they provide to certain social media influencers. I'm not tarring all social media influencers with one brush. I'm telling you things that producers, directors, and PROs have themselves admitted to me. And some of them have said that they now realize this is backfiring because they've muddied the waters to such an extent that large sections of the public, you see what's happening is, Laxmi, unless you're a member of the public who has followed a particular film critic for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, there are a lot of young people coming into the business, and the film industry's games around film reviewing are putting young film critics in a very tough position because they are struggling to build their credibility because they are young and unknown at this moment. They can get clubbed with those who are in the business just for whatever quid pro quo they can get from producers and directors. So ultimately, there are people who are admitting that they are harming themselves because film criticism and freely given film criticism with freedom, without any restrictions, in from media organizations that respect cinema, these have played a role in shaping the discourse around cinema across the world. So much of the terminology we use related to films has come from film critics in different parts of the world. So much of what we've seen in the past 3-4 years, where the mainstream media's effort to the mainstream media in the North especially is very Hindi-centric, very Bollywood-centric, to the extent that they misrepresent Indian cinema and imply that Hindi cinema is all of Indian cinema. But the mainstream media has been forced by public opinion to give more coverage to other Indian film industries. And where is that public opinion coming from? It is coming from people, the public on social media, who did not. So again, whatever the flaws of social media might be, why would film producers with any common sense want to curb the social media? But they're all in this game of wanting to build their own little armies that will put out information that they find suitable. But then when, let's say, the enemy, the rival star's army comes after them and puts out negative information about them, then they are crying. But you can't play the game and expect that others won't. And this is what is happening.
My last question, Anna, because we're running out of time also, is do you think there is enough, like you emphasized enough, how critical this particular move is and how concerned not just film critics, but the general public or social media users should be about this trend of curbing reviews? Do you think there's enough of a pushback, either legally or mobilizing among film writers? Also, given OTT platforms, it's not only all about the Malayalam film critics or the Malayalam film public. With OTT around, I mean, it's being seen by everyone all over the world. So is there enough concern outside of the state? And is there any kind of pushback happening through any legal petitions or any other kind of mobilizing happening?
Outside the state, actually, honestly, this information I don't think it is registered with people across the country that this is happening in Kerala, and that's a fault of the way the so-called national media operates. If this was happening in Bollywood, it would have been headlines everywhere. So outside, which is why I think conversations like this are important, because we need to spread the word. But within Kerala, I think that there has been considerable pushback, which is why after the Kerala Film Producers Association said that they would like to put out a list of do's and don'ts regarding film reviews, and they also have a problem with live reviews from theaters. The FEFCA, which is a major body, major film body in Kerala, had issued a press release saying that they disagree with any move to have some kind of 7-day or 5-day deadline for film reviews, because that would be going against the freedom of expression of whoever is putting out those reviews. The fact that they felt the need to do that, I think, is an indicator that they recognize that this move has not been very well received by the sections of the public who have spoken out. And social media in Kerala is very vibrant. So, and there has been a response from some film journalists who have been critical of the move, but I don't think that it is sufficient. I think that film journalists should band together. And in fact, journalists, media organizations, networks, and associations should band together and convey their concern to Malayalam film industry bodies, because if we don't, then, like I said, it's just a hop, a skip, and a jump away between claiming that you are only trying to curb unethical online entities to trying to curb ethical online entities, whether they are professional film critics or members of the public. So I think that it's very important for this pushback to happen. It's happening in Kerala, but it is not sufficient.
That's really, in a way, a call from this interview that we do need to get the word out and just have a conversation going, because honestly, until I saw what you had been writing, the implications of it hadn't really struck. And thank you for that. And thank you for writing and keeping the flag going about this issue, because it could so well get swept under the carpet amidst, I mean, there's so much else happening in terms of regulation and curbs, but we tend to forget that, art and cinema as vital to our lives as, the news, headline news. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for spending time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.